D2.098.0 has been released, and you can download it in the form of a new version of DMD, the reference compiler, as well as a new version of LDC, the LLVM-based decompiler. On top of that, D is now available on a new old platform. DConf Online 2021 is right around the corner, and Symmetry Autumn of Code 2021 is underway. Plus, we've got some news on some past SAOC projects that we think you might find interesting. Stick around to hear about the details. So D2.098.0 is available, and for me, from my perspective, the biggest deal about this release is this: 160 fixed Bugzilla issues. Now, if we look at the previous major release, 2.097, 144. Before that, 81. Before that, 78. Even these numbers were high. Now, 2.094 in September of last year had 119. But prior to that, everything is like this: 58, 44, 71. We didn't have anything more than 100 that I could find prior to 2.094. Now, I don't know exactly what happened in September of 2020 last year, but I do know that from January of this year, Razvan Nichu was on the job as our pull request and issue manager, and he has been focused on making sure that new issues get attention, that stalled PRs become unstalled, new PRs do not become stalled, and that we have a more efficient process of fixing issues across our core repositories. As part of that, he's put together some strike teams composed of volunteers, and this 160 fixed Bugzilla issues is a result of the work that he and the strike teams have been doing. Now, of course, we're grateful to all the volunteers who have been and who continue to submit issues, to fix issues, to submit pull requests and review pull requests. But now we've got something we didn't have before, and that's Razvan making sure that things move forward. And for that, we can thank Symmetry Investments. They're funding this position. As for features, the big news in this release is right here: the ImportC compiler. D has long had C ABI compatibility. It's been easy to bind D to C libraries. We've had some tools to do it, like H2D, DStep, DPP, and each of these have their flaws. And the big thing about binding with C libraries is you don't get the benefit of inline function calls and compile time function evaluation because the D compiler doesn't have the C source code. ImportC will allow you to directly import C source code into your D program and compile it right into your binary, and it'll be able to inline, it'll be able to evaluate functions at compile time just like it does already with D functions. Right now, the biggest drawback is there's no pre-processing step. In order to get it to work, you have to pre-process the C source code prior to importing it into the D source. And it's a new feature. Walter's been working on it, I think, for about 3 months now with the help of Ian Bukla, and they're looking for people to put it through its paces, find the problems, report the problems so they can get it working. The goal is to be able to compile ISO C11 directly from the D front end. Now, at some point, the preprocessor will have to be addressed. What that will look like, nobody knows right now. That's something for the future. Right now, the goal is to make sure that ImportC can compile preprocessed C11 source code. Now, another big thing in this release is a concurrent garbage collector for POSIX systems. This is not available on Windows. It's available on Linux and the BSDs and Mac. This garbage collector started life as a D1 project by Leandro Lucarella. And then in the Symmetry Autumn of Code 2018, our inaugural event, Francesco Mecca decided as his proposed project, he would port this garbage collector to D2. He did it. He got a PR submitted. He got some help from Rainer Scheutze to clean up the PR and get it ready for merging into D runtime. But for some reason, it never happened and it sat in the PR queue for a while. But recently, Rainer got it up to date and he was able to get it merged. And now this former SAOC project is available to use in the released version of D runtime. To use it, you need to pass this command line option to your program. This is not a command line option for the compiler. This is a command line option for D runtime. Your program links with D runtime, and when you start your program, if you pass this on the command line, D runtime will pick it up and it will use the new GC instead of the default GC. You can also do this programmatically right here by declaring this options array, this RT options array, with the correct option. And there's more on that in the documentation. Links for this and the ImportC page in the documentation, which is not this, not the changelog, will be in the description below. LDC 1.28.0 is also up to par with D 2.98.0, just like the new DMD. And this has a really cool new feature, dynamic casts across binary boundaries. D's support for DLLs on Windows has been problematic over the years. Not all of the language features work across the boundaries, and it was usually necessary to put an extern C interface on a DLL if you wanted to use it from your program. But Martin Kinkelin has been working on improving DLL support in LDC for the past few releases, and one of his goals is to get Phobos and D runtime available as a DLL, and he achieved that with a previous release. And now this improves DLL support in LDC. You can now cast dynamically across the DLL boundaries. The LDC compiler release is available from the LDC GitHub page, link down below. And the latest DMD is available from the download page at dlang.org directly. Plus, we've got links to LDC and GDC. Now, GDC is not yet compatible with 2.098, and that is in a future release, and I will be announcing that on the blog and on this channel. Now, as for that new platform I teased and the opener, OpenBSD. We've been on FreeBSD, but D is now available on OpenBSD. DMD, LDC, and GDC. The instructions on installing DMD are right here on the DMD download page. This command right here, you can extrapolate that to GDC and LDC just by changing these three letters to the appropriate characters. And we can thank Brian Callahan for bringing D to OpenBSD. He'll be giving a talk about that at DConf Online, Life Outside the Big Four, The Adventure of D on OpenBSD. And he'll talk about the steps it took to bring D to the platform in the hopes that it can help other people bringing D to other platforms outside of Windows, Linux, Mac, and FreeBSD. Thanks, Brian. Looking forward to the talk. DConf Online is happening November 20th and 21st. That's a Saturday and a Sunday. It starts at 2 p.m. UTC on both days. Attila Neves, one of the language maintainers, will be kicking things off on day one. And the other maintainer and the creator of the D programming language, Walter Bright, will get us started on day two. Now, we don't yet know the topics of their talks, but as soon as they provide that information to me, I will publish it on the website where you currently see to be announced. Altogether, in addition to the two keynotes, we have 6 other pre-recorded talks, 3 on each day. And at the end of day one, we've got a live coding session from Adam Rupa. This year, it looks like he's going to continue the project he started in the live coding session he did last year. And then at the end of day 2, we've got our traditional Ask Us Anything. Now, usually in the real world DConf, this happens in front of a live audience in the venue. And last year for DConf Online 2020, we brought this tradition online in a live stream Q&A, and we're doing the same thing again this year. Except this time around, Walter and Attila will be joined by Razvan Nitsu, our pull request and issue manager. So if you have any questions that you would like to ask any of these 3 directly, this will be your chance to do so. We've got some DConf Online 2021 t-shirts for sale at the D-Lang Swag Emporium. We've got 2 flavors for you this year, a Zenburn style and a Solarized style. And when you order, you can change the type of shirt that the image is applied to. And you can also change the color. Now on these specific items, the D-Language Foundation gets a 15% royalty. And on other items in our store, the royalties vary between 18% to 20%. And all of that goes straight to the D-Language Foundation General Fund. You can also donate directly to the general fund through our Flip Cause page here. You can go to the donation page at dlang.org to find out more about how to donate to the D-Language Foundation General Fund and the other funds. The D-Language Foundation uses the general fund for a variety of purposes, but it's relevant to DConf Online because we give away prizes to viewers who ask questions during the live stream Q&As. We also provide t-shirts and a choice of coffee mug from the D-Lang Swag Emporium to all of our speakers. Those are our only expenses, by the way. So go ahead and buy yourself a DConf Online 2021 t-shirt. You get something, we get something, and everybody wins. Thanks in advance. Now, there are 4 components to DConf Online. We have the pre-recorded talks, the Q&A live stream that runs in parallel to the pre-recorded talks, and this is also where we do the Ask Us Anything. And we'll have Adam's live stream where he does his live coding session. And this is separate from the main Q&A live stream. And we'll also have the Jitsi Meet instance where we'll be hosting BeerConf all weekend long. Now, BeerConf is kind of a tradition. It's just a place for people who enjoy the D programming language to get together and chat face-to-face. Usually happens during DConf in the real world. There's a designated gathering spot every evening after the talks. And Ethan Watson coined the term BeerConf for this informal gathering, I believe when we were in Berlin for DConf 2017. Now, last year when DConf 2020 was canceled, he and other members of the D community decided to bring BeerConf online. And that has now become a monthly event where D programmers on the last weekend of every month can get together in a Jitsi Meet instance and talk face-to-face the best that we can do online. So obviously, DConf Online is not happening the last weekend of November, but BeerConf is going to be scheduled to coincide with the event. And it should be happening all weekend long. You can drop in anytime and say hi. You don't have to be a D programmer and you don't have to drink beer. Now, a couple of weeks prior to DConf Online, I'll be publishing a video here showing you how to participate so that you don't get lost. Symmetry Autumn of Code 2021, sponsored by Symmetry Investments, got underway on September 15th when we started Milestone 1. We have 5 projects this year: rethinking the default class hierarchy, replacing D runtime hooks with templates, implement support for D in LLVM debugger, lightweight D runtime, and solving dependency hell in Dub. Now, we have hopes that each of these projects is going to be beneficial to the D community in one way or another, and we wish all of our SAOC participants the best of luck in working on these projects. Now, I've already mentioned how a former SAOC project found its way into an official release of D runtime in the forking GC. There's more news on an older SAOC project. In SAOC 2020, Adela Vai implemented a D backend for the Bison parser generator. This is not a small project, really, and her goal in implementing this backend was to get it accepted into GNU Bison. Well, happy to announce that she was successful. D backend, a deterministic parser attributed by Adela Vai, is now in Bison 3.8.1. Congratulations, Adela, for a job well done. So now if you're looking for a parser generator for any kind of language you're writing in D, you now have a new option for native D in the form of Bison. So before I go, I want to thank all of our subscribers. You've gotten us over the 1,000 mark, and that means we'll now be able to use our YouTube channel to raise money for the D-Language Foundation. Thanks for that. If you haven't subscribed, please do. We've got content coming aside from DConf Online 2021. I'll be announcing more about that hopefully in my next news post in December. So stay tuned for that. And I'll be back before DConf, don't forget, with a guide on how to participate in DConf Online 2021. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.